Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. You'll have to forgive me, my voice has not come back yet. I have been a bit unwell, so you'll have to forgive me. I hope you'll forgive me. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Ki Sisa. In the middle of the week we had Purim Cotton, which comes before the regular Purim in the Shana Mu'beres. So we have to understand the connection between Parshas Ki Sisa and Purim Cotton, and what is the lesson that we take in our daily life. Today we're going to talk about a subject which I believe is very underrated, and because of the feel-good selfie generation, it's something which is not stressed enough, and I think is a dreadful mistake that manifests itself in many, many ways, and we have to stick to the truths of Torah. So, as usual, we'll start with a prayer. This time we'll say a prayer from the Siddur itself, and that is the words Psach libi b'seidasecha. V'nafshika for l'kol tiyeh. Psach libi b'seidasecha. Let my soul be as humble as dust before everyone. Open my heart to your Torah. So, even though in the regular prayers, the simple meaning, the words v'nafshi kafel l'kol tiyeh go on the words before, in the continuation, there's a full stop after the words, my soul should be like dust before everyone, and then it continues, open my heart to the Torah. But as we know, all those that learned the Rebbe's Torah and Chassidus, the Rebbe connects the two things. One flows after the other. When a person will successfully be v'nafshi kafel l'kol tiyeh, he'll be humble, then his heart will be open to Torah. And that's what we're going to discuss today. In this week's Pasha is one of the most catastrophic, so to speak, events in the history of the Jewish nation. And that is the Jews sinned with the Chet HaEgel. And Moshe Rabbeinu saw what was happening, and he smashed the luchos. So, everyone knows there's many questions on this idea that Moshe Rabbeinu smashed the luchos, and at the end of the Torah, Rashi brings down the Gemara that says Moshe smashed the luchos, the end of the Torah, and it's seemingly a praise. That's how we finished the whole Torah. Moshe smashed the luchos, and then the Eibusha told him on the words Asher Shibarta, Yasher Koyach Asher Shibarta. Thank you for breaking them. So here comes the famous question: what was the thank you? What was the positive aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu smashing the luchos? So it's a well-known subject, and it's discussed in many places in the Rebbe's Torah. Today we're going to focus on one sicha, one aspect, such a radical word that's in Likutei Sichas Chelik Chavav Ki Sisa Gimel, the third sikh of Ki Sisa. But first, let's take it step by step. The Rebbe talks about it and asks the question: what is the positive aspect of Moshe Rabbeinu smashing the luchos? So first he brings from the Rashi, where Rashi says the following on the Posuk, Kapitel Amid Beis, Posuk Yutes, where it says Vayicharaf Moshe got angry, Vayashlich miyodo v'saluchos, Vayishaber Yisam, he let them drop and he smashed the tablets. So Rashi says, Omar, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ma Pesach shu echad min ha-mitzvos. When it comes to the Korban Pesach, which is just only one mitzvah, it says, Amar Torah kol ben nechal lo yechal boi. The Torah says, no stranger shall not eat it. Ha-Torah kula kan. And over here we have the entire Torah, because it's the event of Matan Torah and the luchos, which contain all of the Torah. And v'chol Yisrael meshumadim. And so to speak, all the Yidden became converts, because they showed idolatry in a certain sense. That means that they converted to another religion. They accepted another God. Chas v'shalom, Rachmana litzlan. That then I'm going to give them the Torah. If they can't get a Korban Pesach, just because a goy can't get a Korban Pesach, which is just one mitzvah, how could someone who's acting like a goy get the whole Torah? Of course not. So therefore he broke the luchos. That's what Rashi says over here. That's one source. That's how Moshe knew to destroy it. That explains what his logic was, what his reasoning was. And there's another Rashi also in this week's parsha where it speaks about v'chasafti aluchas esadvorim asher hoyu aluchas rishonim asher shibarta. Over here also it says asher shibarta in Kapitel Lamed Pasuk Aleph, and Rashi says the famous analogy Moshel Melech Shahalach Dinas Hayam. A king went overseas. He left his wife with the maidservants, and as a result of the scandalous conduct of the maidservants, there came about bad rumors, bad reputation about the wife. Her good friend, in our case, the good friend of the Jewish nation, Moshe Rabbeinu, arose and tore up her ksuba, like the marriage contract. Omar, im geimer hamelech laharga. The good friend's reasoning was, if the king will say that she should be killed because he thinks she committed adultery, Omer aloi, I will tell him, adayin eino ishtecha. She is not yet your wife, because she never got the marriage contract. It was destroyed, it was ripped up. So too over here, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to make sure that this marriage contract wouldn't be the document that would cause them to be judged harshly. That would be the worst problem if we had this document that made them obligated and guilty. So therefore he got rid of it. So that's two explanations. Then there's a third explanation that the Rebbe brings in the Sicha, in Chelik Chavav, that I said Tezayim before, Chelik Chavav, and the Rebbe brings in the Sicha a medrash which says as follows: Omalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem tells Moshe, Al titzta'er beluchos harishonos. Don't feel bad by the fact that you had to destroy the first set of tablets. They only contain the 10 Commandments. But a beluchos hashniim, ani noisnu chashay behem halachas, medrash, v'agodas, kaflayim l'sushiyah. The whole Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, comes out of the second tablets. So this medrash explains something which is still problematic if we go according to the first two explanations. Because according to the first two explanations, we still don't know, why does it have to be smashed? Why do they have to be shattered? If he wanted to make it that they don't have the contract, he could have hidden it, he could have put it away. And the same thing according to the first explanation, that he said, how can I give it to a nation which is Mishumadim? Same thing. So he shouldn't have to give it to them. Why does he have to shatter it? Why does he have to break it? But according to this third explanation, that Hashem says, thank you that you broke the first ones, because now they're going to get a second set. And in the second set is going to be the whole Torah Sheba'al Peh. Now the Rebbe explains what is the meaning, a new answer to a question that someone could ask on this. And that is, why is it that the second luchas contain Torah Sheba'al Peh? Why? Is it different than the first? Like in the Chefza? So the truth is, I don't understand it 100%, but I'm going with the way the Rebbe is going here. And it's so amazing that I'm going to have to read it inside, what the Rebbe says, or else I don't know if you're going to believe it. You know what I'm saying? And the story is like this. Because Torah is infinite, and we spoke about this many times, Torah is Hashem himself. And wie nennt man Bligvul? How do we take infinity? Nicht durch dein Metzias, nor durch dein nicht Metzias. How do we take infinity? Not through your existence, but through your non-existence. Make way for the big wave. Yield before the infinity. Make a space, become invisible, become transparent, etc., etc., like we spoke many times with the analogy of Reb Zera, who had to fast 40 or 100 fasts in order to forget Talmud Bavli, to learn Talmud Yishalmi, and we spoke when something's totally incomparable, unparalleled, the next level, like we need a leap. So whatever came before is not enough. We have to completely step away from before to the degree that all your previous preconceived notions, suppositions, attitudes have to become forgotten. And then we could receive the infinity. Kli reikon machzik, an empty vessel receives. So we spoke about that many times. So I'm not going to elaborate so much on the concept. I don't like repeating myself, etc. But now, let's go to the story of Matan Torah. And the Rebbe says as follows, that what happened, Matan Torah is given this man when the Rebbe stot ba'ifun goli boiche given dem Am Yisrael. Matan Torah, God chose the Jewish nation. Uvonu v'charti mikol am v'loshin. Zusammen mit v'roim am tonu. He elevated us. He exalted us. So you could say that Sinai and the revelation of Sinai was our most finest moment, our highest moment. Is the Rebbe moving as demot when Eden seinen gewähren in der Matze from Reimus Vesnasus, when we were in a state of exaltedness, seinen sie al piteva die Gdusha nicht gewähren scheich zu a Matze von Ka'ofel Akel. We weren't humbled before everyone. In order to be a vehicle for Torah, you have to be v'nafshi Ka'ofel Akel tiyeh. You have to be humble before every person. Not only just be humble, but humble to everyone. And as the Rebbe brings the Gemara, a medrash which says, you have to be like the earth, shahakal doshen boy, that everyone treads upon you. Mistaka. I'm just reading it inside again because the words over here are so awesome. Mistaka as these galos hashchine beis Matan Torah to getan in zeidem regish von charado bittul, even though there was an awesome revelation, which caused them to have a sense of nullification and being in awe and reverence, is the sabaklanit lakel. That still doesn't mean that would cause them to be humble before another person, before everyone. So there's two problems. Number one, that point, that experience meant they nullified themselves before God, and also it came as a result from above, an act of God. It was from without, not from within. They really didn't become humbled yet. The Iden mitzadatzmam, the Jews on their own, steindik and tachlis hili ve'esnasis, because they were so elevated and exalted, als makabele ha'torah dichem de genuza shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they were different than all of humanity. We are special. We got a Torah. Seien sie nicht given shaykh zu v'nafshi kofel ha'koil, sha'koil doshem bei. They weren't humble before everyone to the degree that they actually would allow someone else and consider someone else superior. Und das ist der Yasher Koyach sheshibarta. And this is what it means that Hashem said thank you to Moshe. Weil die Shviris Haluches in Haneufen von Ve'eshberem le'inechem hat aufgetan bei Eden dem Gefühl von Shiflus und Shviris Lev. When they saw this radical act of Moshe Rabbeinu, something they could never have imagined, that he should shatter and smash the luchas in front of their eyes. But this made them a proper vehicle to kennen ufnemen die kafayim l'sushia from luchas shnias der ribui adin sof and teresh balpeh. Wow. So here's the Rebbe's explanation in a way that the smashing of the tablets had nothing to do with the sin. Of course, that was the way the Eibishter caused that the story should happen. But really, they needed to go through this experience. The shattering of all preconceived notions. The shattering of their ego. So they should have a certain sense of humility. You know, they say, mistakes are God's way of reminding you that you're human. The same thing's over here. The whole chet of ego was to come to this experience, this lesson. You make mistakes. Don't think of yourself as the hot stuff, etc., etc. You have your limitations. Somebody wrote, this action, Moshe smashing luchis, had a greater effect upon the souls of the people than all the sermons, miracles, and even trials that they had been exposed to up to this point. That's exactly the point that the Rebbe is making over here. It was an indispensable lesson in humility. So, obviously, you can ask many questions. This is really similar to in other places where there's a Gemara that talks about the Chet Egel, that it brought about the union of Tshuva, similar to what David HaMelech taught us. There's different sichas that the Rebbe talks about it in Oisius of Tshuva. But over here, the Rebbe is talking about it in words of humility, and I find it so relevant, so important, on so many levels. You know, you have a person, he thinks he's special. Why? Because my father was this, my grandfather was this, and he walks around boasting. But the truth is, if you just have that feeling, you're not going to end up in the right place. Hopefully, like we spoke many times, the word that the Rebbe Rashab said, humble yourself before you'll have to be humbled. And this is what happened. Over here, Moshe had to have this totally shocking episode of him smashing the luchas in front of all the Yidden so that they should be humbled. So then they became a vehicle. And now getting back to why they could get the second luchas, and through the second luchas, they had the Torah Sheba'al Peh. According to this explanation, it's because they changed. So once they changed, they had more bittul, more humility, then they were able to receive more and discover more. Because since they made themselves greater vehicles for the infinity, more infinity could be revealed in them. See the sikh over there at length. And the Rebbe also connects it with another Meir de Gevart. I'm just going to say in brief that that's why also in the Koche Kochim, as we know, there was the Luchos, the second set of tablets that were whole, and also the broken, shattered pieces. And that's a question. Why? Why do we have to save these broken pieces? Okay, he shattered the Luchos. Let's get rid of the old model. We'll just have the new model upgrade. No. So the Rebbe explains, because a Jew has to have both of these dimensions going on at the same time. On one hand, the second Luchos represents how a Jew becomes united. Your mind unites with God's mind. A meeting of the minds. The finite mind comes to comprehend infinity and becomes one with it. That's what the second Luchos represents. But the first Luchos has to always be there. You have to have that combination, that cocktail of humility. Remember, only when you'll have Shivrei Luchos, a sense of humility, then you'll come to the second Luchos understanding. So it's Bittul and Yichud at the same time, as we spoke many times. So again, I don't want to get into this whole concept of Bittul and Yichud and how you find it all over the place. That on one hand, you have to have the ultimate humility, but on the other hand, through that humility, you'll come to be the greatest existence, so to speak. And then he explains, the Rebbe, that's why it's a Koche Kochim. Because the Jew gets the koyach from this idea. What's the Koche Kochim? What happened in the Koche Kochim? The ark transcended space and was in space at the same time. It defied the laws of physics. It was a fusion of opposites. And this is what a Jew could successfully do in his avodah. He could have this fusion of opposites, that he has ultimate humility, but at the same time, ultimate Jewish pride. There's an amazing word, it could be I said it before, I'm not sure, that the Alter Rebbe said, listen to this. Rabbeinu Azok in Oma Pam, the Alter Rebbe once said, when the Rebbe had gewollt Messiah sein, die Remos von Seiden, when the Mezritcher Magid wanted to describe the exaltedness of the Baal Shem Tov, Omar, he said, Ki Reimemus Melech Adir, the exaltedness, the royalty, the exaltedness of an awesome, powerful king who killah. It's nothing. Neged the Reimemus from the Rebbe compared to the exaltedness of the Rebbe. When I said, gered wegen dem Bittel from Baal Shem Tov, when he spoke about the nullification, the selflessness of the Baal Shem Tov, Omar, the Maggid would say, Ki ish oni meduke, hashofel v'nivzer b'yoysoi b'einei atzmoi. The poorest person who's crushed and shunned by society in his own eyes. He looks at himself as unworthy. How low you can imagine a person who has nothing, a homeless person, was nothing compared to how the Baal Shem Tov felt about himself. And when the Alter Rebbe would say over this word that he heard from the Magid, was the Rebbe gesagt, listen to what my master the Magid said. Das ist der Inyan, oiring sof l'maylo aden ketz, or l'mata aden tachlis. This is a statement about the infinity of Hashem, that it is higher than high to no end, and lower than low to no end. So that's it. These two dual consciousness and awareness, that on one end the Baal Shem Tov felt more greater than the most powerful king, but on the other hand he felt as humble as a homeless, poor person that was suffering through abject poverty. These days we're holding now in the Shir Tanya, we're holding in the middle of learning Perek Lamed, and I want to talk about humility. And chapter 30 of Tanya talks about humility. I don't want to get into it, and this is directed primarily to my students. Whoever doesn't like it, what should I say? I believe today we look at society, at youth, that everyone is unwell and super sensitive and fragile. And therefore we have to tell them, you're amazing, you're the best, you're unbelievable. That's true. And he does have to get that message. But that's only one side of the message. And the problem with that is, it's like the Alter Rebbe says about Ava without Yira and Yira without Ava. If a person is fed only that language, and that's the only record they hear, then they grow up to be selfish and narcissistic. That's the way it is. And they lost what Chassidus was all about. Like the Baal Shem Tov said, to take your ani and make it ayin. Your ego should not be a negative ego and a selfish ego, channeled in the right direction. That it becomes about the cause, it becomes about the Jewish nation, it becomes about God. You're unbelievably strong, and you have unbelievable self-confidence because you're a Jew, and because God chose you. But then you're also strong enough to not have to get your way, to yield to another person, because it's not about yourself. And this is what's missing today, this whole thing that we described, how the Baal Shem Tov on the one hand felt like the mightiest king, but at the same time he felt like the poorest person. This is what we have to educate ourselves and others about. And for some reason it's got lost. I don't know, lost in translation. We're scared to say the word bittul. It's scary. It's shocking if that's what the story is today. You know, and I believe if you went to a chas v'shalom Rachmana litzlan, to a therapist, to an Eastern religion, to I don't know what, yoga or some guru, and they will say, lose yourself, then you find yourself. Then you'd say, wow, that makes sense. I can't be full of myself and try to change. I have to lose myself. Lose yourself in the cause. Lose yourself in something greater than yourself. Oh, that we understand. So let's hear people talk like that. For your health. You want to be a healthy person? You have to know how to yield. You want to be a healthy person? You have to be humble. That's going to make you strong. In the healthy way, in a positive way. And that's Yiddishkeit, that's Chassidus. But for some reason, I don't hear many rabbis talking like that. They're only talking about, you're amazing, you're Superman, you're the greatest. I make a joke sometimes. Until I heard these rabbis talk, I thought I was God. Now I know I'm God. No, I'm making a joke. But I'm just saying, we have to have the balance. You should be healthy enough to be able to be humble. And you don't see it as a problem. You're not scared of humility. You're not scared of yielding. You're not scared of saying you're sorry. And in Tanya, chapter 30, we're learning these days, I mean, just with one line is the whole story of how you could change your life. The Alter Rebbe talks about humility and he says, that's what Alter Rebbe says in chapter 30. So he says, we don't want no fake humility. It's not an act that you're acting humble, but the whole time you're holding on to your own self-importance. No, you have to actually, truthfully, genuinely be humble and see the other person has a quality that you don't have. So number one, this is the Alter Rebbe. This is Chassidus. You want to know what Chassidus is? That when the Alter Rebbe is talking about humility, he tells you all the way truthfully. And then he says, B'fnei kol adam mamish. No exceptions. B'fnei kol ha'adam mamish. Literally, Torah is mamish. Not allegorically speaking, not poetically speaking, but mamish, literally. And this is the chassidus that the teachers, the educators, the parents have to transmit. Figure out a way. But this is the real deal. This is the dosage you have to be getting. This is the food you should be getting. This is our nurturance. And this is the connection to Purim Cotton and the Parsha Shavua, that something small, Shivrei Luchas, brings us to the greatest greatness. The Luchas Shnias, the entire infinity of Torah Shebal Peh. So, about Purim Cotton, I recently heard the Rebbe talking to another rabbi, a Polish Rebbe, in the Yechidus, behind closed doors, but there was a microphone. And the Rebbe is describing how he's inspired by the story of the Frierdiker Rebbe in 1927, Purim Cotton, what the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke, and he was warned that this is going to cause trouble for the people that come to hear your speech, and for the families, and for the synagogue. And the Frierdiker Rebbe just went ahead and spoke about Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice of the children, and how it's the self-sacrifice of the children in the story of Purim that's going to be the key to our salvation in 1927. So he used the story of Purim and Mordechai arousing self-sacrifice by the youth, that they said, Itcha anu, we're with you. Thousands of Jewish children cried out to Mordechai, we're with you. And the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe in 1927 Moscow, in the most dangerous circumstances, did not bend, did not budge. And the Rebbe says to this rabbi that a chassid, when it comes Purim Cotton, this is what he thinks about immediately. The events that happened in 1927 Moscow of my father-in-law. So the way the Rebbe talks about it, he's getting inspiration, for lack of a better word. It's the Rebbe as a chassid talking about his Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, his father-in-law, and how what he did, a speech, a mimer, that he chazed in a synagogue in Moscow in 1927, Purim Cotton, still has reverberations 50, 60, 70 years later. 1927, and the story I told you now that he spoke to this rabbi is in 1984. And the Rebbe is still talking about it, on fire, with the spirit of defiance and self-sacrifice for Yiddishkeit, because of one story, one event, one mimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe said on Purim Cotton. And this is what the Rebbe says, the message of Purim Cotton. It's called a small Purim. And the Rebbe always says the quote that we say when a child is given a bris, Zeh HaKotten Godel Yeh. This small day, this small thing will become a giant, will become great. And this is the message of Purim Cotton. This is the message of Parshas Sisa. This is the message of Shivrei Haluchas. We have to become small, practice humility, and through our practicing humility, we'll reach true greatness. And that's what we have to think about. Small giants become small. And the smaller you become, the healthier you become, the bigger you become. Okay, that's the way it works. The smaller you become, the more humility you have, in direct proportion to your humility, you'll reach greatness. You'll reach heights of development, of self-development, of character development that you'd never reach any other way. Maybe she should help that through our practicing humility, Zeh Cotton Godel Gier, from this Purim Cotton, we should come to Purim Godel, take it from Ad Mamish, hereinspringen, like it says, when Mashiach comes, Purim is the only yontif, it says somewhere that's still going to be when Mashiach comes. And this should bring us to the Geula, Mitzvah Shlema, take it from a yad, mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborech, your man in Melbourne.